It all began with a message, just 3 words. When you free. For Jerel Prior, a 26-year-old father living in Indianapolis, it seemed like the start of something hopeful. He had connected with a young woman online, Alexis Hawkins, just 19, and was looking forward to what he thought would be a normal first date. Jerel was a proud girl dad, someone who cherished bedtime stories and imagined walking his daughter down the aisle someday. That night, he was simply hoping to get to know someone new, maybe even start something fresh. But what Jerel didn't know was that behind Alexis's friendly texts and light conversation, something darker was unfolding. As she chatted with Jerel, she was also messaging someone else. Not just anyone, but her boyfriend, 18-year-old Brian Winston Jr. According to investigators, Alexis and Brian were secretly planning something sinister. Jerel wasn't meeting a woman for a date. He was being lured into a trap. On the surface, it was just a casual meetup, a young man trying to find connection in a digital world. But beneath it all, a setup was allegedly forming, one that would shatter a family, take a life, and leave a little girl without her father. And the night hadn't even begun. It was late, close to midnight, when Jerel Prior pulled up to meet Alexis Hawkins in person for the first time. The air in Indianapolis was cold that January night, but Jerel was warm with hope. He thought maybe tonight could lead to something good. A connection, a second date, maybe even someone who could one day meet his little girl. He didn't know he was already surrounded by danger. Alexis slid into the passenger seat of Jerel's car. To Jerel, it may have felt like a calm beginning. They sat together, chatted, maybe even laughed. But what he didn't know was that Brian Winston Jr., Alexis's boyfriend, was already nearby and waiting. Police say the plan had already been set in motion. Texts and Instagram messages, later uncovered by detectives, suggested the meetup was just a distraction. While Jerel thought he was getting to know someone, Alexis was secretly giving away his location. The trap was tightening. Then just before 1 a.m., it happened. Out of the shadows, Brian allegedly appeared. There was no warning, no time to run. He opened fire. Jerel Prior died in that car, still sitting beside the woman he believed he was there to meet. A young father full of life and love was gone in an instant. His 2-year-old daughter would wake up the next morning to a world that would never be the same. The following hours were filled with chaos, not just for Jerel's family, who hadn't even heard the news yet, but for the 2 people now fleeing the consequences of what had been done. But digital footprints are hard to erase, and police would soon begin piecing together a story more disturbing than anyone imagined. The morning after the shooting, a quiet dread settled over the city. The kind that comes when someone young and full of promise is taken too soon. Jerel Prior was gone, but while he no longer had a voice, his phone did. As police arrived at the scene and began the grim work of documenting evidence, Jerel's messages were still fresh, text bubbles frozen in time. Conversations with Alexis Hawkins showed nothing unusual at first glance, a flirty tone, casual back and forth. But when detectives looked closer, they noticed something strange. Alexis wasn't just talking to Jerel that night. Behind the scenes, she had been messaging someone else through Instagram, her boyfriend, Brian Winston Jr. The text painted a chilling picture. While setting up the date with Jerel, Alexis was also coordinating details with Brian. Not about plans for the next weekend, not about homework or friends, but about what was going to happen that night. Even more telling was what came after the murder. According to the affidavit, Alexis conducted a series of disturbing Google searches. News Today, shootings Keystone, news near me. She also messaged people asking for rides near the scene of the shooting, and around the same time Jerel was killed. All of it layered into a growing stack of digital evidence that led detectives straight to her. When police questioned Alexis days later, she played innocent. She claimed she didn't remember much. She said she didn't have a weapon. My fingerprints aren't on anything, she told them. But when asked why her fingerprints might be in Jerel's car, she reportedly said, "It's not going to be on no weapon, though." Then came the moment that cracked her calm. Investigators brought up a message she had sent earlier, one that mentioned she was going to make a play. With that, Alexis went silent. She asked for a lawyer. Within hours, both she and Brian Winston Jr. were under arrest. The charge, murder. The arrests were just the beginning. As Alexis Hawkins and Brian Winston Jr. sat in separate cells, the weight of what they were accused of began to take shape, not only in the public's eyes, but in the legal system that now moved swiftly toward justice. Both were charged with murder and robbery, resulting in serious bodily injury. But there was a twist in how those charges were applied. Alexis, though she hadn't pulled the trigger, was facing a charge known as felony murder, a law that holds anyone involved in a felony responsible if someone dies during its commission. It didn't matter if she shot Jerel or not. If she helped plan the robbery and Jerel died as a result, that was enough. In court documents, prosecutors argued that Alexis had played a central role in luring Jerel to his death. She set up the meeting. She climbed into his car. And through messages sent to Brian, she gave away his location. Her defense, if she chose to speak, might be that she didn't know what Brian would do, that he acted out of jealousy, not planning, that she never expected a gun, that she was just a scared teenager caught in something she couldn't control. But the evidence painted a different picture. Messages about making a play, searches about local shootings, a post-shooting exchange between Alexis and Brian that read simply, "I love you. I'm sorry." Then there was Brian Winston Jr., the alleged shooter. His defense team had even more to consider. His phone, according to the affidavit, had been damaged, an attempt, police believed, to hide his tracks. If the court confirmed he fired the fatal shot, he could be looking at 65 years in prison. Now came the games lawyers played behind the scenes. Defense teams racing to cut deals, maybe even turn one suspect against the other. Who would cooperate first? Who would get the lesser sentence? To the public, it was a tragic crime, but to the courts, it was now a high-stakes chess match, one where every text, every emoji, every Google search could mean decades of freedom lost. And while both teenagers waited for their day in court, Jerel Prior's family waited too. Not for vengeance, but for answers, for closure, for justice that might help ease the silence left behind by a father's final night. In the quiet corners of their home, Jerel Prior's family keeps his memory alive. They speak his name softly. They tell stories about his laughter. They keep photos of him smiling, holding his daughter in his arms, the proud girl dad who once dreamed of seeing her grow up strong and happy. But now that little girl wakes up each day without her father. She's too young to understand why he never came home, why he missed her third birthday, why she'll never again hear his voice reading bedtime stories or feel his hand holding hers across the street. His mother, Tamika Y., said it best, "I'm broken inside." That birthday, the one her father should have been at, was a painful reminder. No hugs, no laughter, no Jerel. And while the courtroom may one day deliver a verdict, for Jerel's family, justice will never truly mean healing. How do you fix a life torn apart by a text, a trap, and a trigger? The case will wind its way through the Indiana legal system. Both Alexis Hawkins and Brian Winston Jr. face up to 65 years in prison, with a mandatory minimum of 45. Prosecutors are gathering every message, every search history, every social media exchange. The story is now evidence. Lines of text replacing spoken words. Data replacing breath. And while attorneys argue strategy, while deals are considered or trials unfold, one fact remains unchanged. A little girl will grow up without her dad. That's the real sentence. Not the one given in a courtroom, but the one served every day by those Jerel left behind. And so, this story isn't just about betrayal or violence. It's about what's lost in moments that seem small at first. A date, a message, a ride. But when put together, they tell a heartbreaking truth. Sometimes monsters don't wear masks. Sometimes they smile at you from the passenger seat.